always saying, oh, I've got space now, and being welcomed into the world.
40 weeks for men. 40 weeks for men. 40 weeks for men.
And we're week 34 of development of the baby this week. We're going to reflect on that. We're thinking this week about making space. Stretch. Making space. So we're going to try and educate, learn together, witness the man experience, talk about society at large, and call listeners to action. So listen and enjoy, and let's learn together to start with. So with the education section, a couple of things that I want to highlight, but let's think about boys and girls. So at this point, week 34, some quite amazing things are happening if you're having a boy. So not a lot of people know, well, I didn't know it until I actually studied it, but the reproductive potential of a boy is becoming more realized at week 34. So I'll use the technical terms here and I'll explain it. So there are a couple of organs in the tummy that allow the boy later on to have babies himself. So the technical term for these are the testicles. So the testicles, those organs, they actually start off in the tummy or the abdomen of the boy, and they descend down into the boy's private area. So that's called the scrotum, the technical term. And that allows, and hopefully that goes right, and there are cases where that doesn't go right, and it needs medical help, but usually that allows the boy later on to be in a position where he can have babies as well. And yeah, week 34 development, this descent, this journey is happening from the abdomen or the tummy of the boy down to the scrotum, down to the private area of the boy, in order to allow him to develop that ability to have babies later on. And with the girl, interesting fact, girls are born with all of the eggs that they ever will have. And I think it's interesting because obviously at week 34 we're thinking about the reproductive potential of the boy, but girls already have this reproductive potential, and when they're first born, they actually have, even though the eggs are immature, they have all of the eggs that they will ever have. And it's interesting to think about that. See, I wanted to highlight that. But the second part that I wanted to highlight is actually, most of the time, when we think about observation of the developing baby at week 34 development, most of the time, babies are curled up in the womb or the mother's tummy or the uterus. Babies are curled up. So when I say curled up, I mean like this. Right? Most of the time they're curled up like this. So it's quite like it appears that they don't have a lot of space. Because obviously, as we said in previous episodes, they've grown in there, putting on the healthy weight in order to get bigger and bigger and ready for life outside of the womb. And most of the time they're curled up in there. Now it's time to witness my experience. So obviously with my 3 babies, there's something I really want to highlight here. Is that I think it was either the first or the second, I'm not sure, but all of them must have done it, but I noticed it either in the first or the second birth. When my baby, my girl, my daughter was born, it was so cool because she did like a big stretch, like a big stretch like that. And it was amazing because like it was like, oh, now I have space to stretch my arms and legs. And I just really think about it now because I'm thinking of week 34 and I'm like, you must have been really curled up in that womb. And now you're out in the world, you can stretch and open up your limbs and like stretch out. And I witnessed that firsthand when I was at the birth of my babies, and I saw my daughter do that and stretch out. Now to talk about society at large. So we'll go to the Bible here. I think a really good verse for us to learn from here is Hebrews chapter 11 verse 8. So I'll go ahead and read that from the English Standard Version. I found it in the Bible and I'll read it from the English Standard Version. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go to a place he was to receive as an inheritance, and he did not know where he was going. Yeah. So it's important to say right off the bat that obviously for the context here, we're talking about Abraham. We're going to be thinking about making space because we're thinking about week 34 development. But if you want to know like more examples of faith and everything, Hebrews chapter 11 is a great chapter to learn about these examples and lots of examples. And actually, if you want to know more about the Old Testament story of Abraham, a good place to look is in the book of Genesis, the first book of the Bible. But yeah, that'll give you more context around what we're saying. But I think there's parallel things that we can learn here. So when we think about this verse, we think about Abraham like making space by faith and actually going out of a place that he was used to, a place that he was called to, going out to receive a land as an inheritance. And I think of the baby at week 34 development in there, like see growing and like becoming bigger and putting on that good healthy weight. But I also think about like my babies when they were born and how my first daughter, she did her big stretch, and that was her way of like always saying, oh, I've got space now, and being welcomed into the world. And I think that we can learn from the story of Abraham here that actually making space and having space and going to a place that you're called to is a good thing. And actually, I think we should all realize that there is definitely something for us to learn here. Making space and stretching out can be a really good thing. Now it's time to call listeners to action. So the call to action this week is make space. Make space. So that can look different for each person. For me personally, the way I make space is I try at least once a week to at least spend a little bit of time to reflect on how the week has gone and just think about what I want to do next week. So like I try not to get too religious about these things, but I think it's important to have that kind of rhythm of work and rest, and I try and do that at least once a week. Another thing I found really helpful is that we're thinking of boys and girls in the education section. Most boys, we stand up to use the bathroom. So I try now to sit down more so. The reason I sit down is because that makes me automatically think about life. And when I use the bathroom to do number one, I try and make space there and try and think about the good things as well. Try and think about how I'm doing well to make space for community, family, friends, community, enemies. But I also try and think about, you know, what I can change and what I can do better. And yeah, I found that time helpful for me. I don't always have lots of time when I use the bathroom, but I found it helpful. So I wonder what would be good for you, not you plant, but you listeners. I wonder what would be good for you to make space this week. Try and do it. Try and make space, try and stretch.